Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want to welcome you to my regular updates from Washington, D.C. I'm going to get to my message in a moment, but I want to, again, hope everybody's going to celebrate a safe and healthy, hopefully, Halloween tonight. I know we claim on my house in Lee Street in Old Town Alexandria, we're kind of Halloween central. Expect to have a couple thousand kids come by our house, but again, hope we will all get through in a healthy way. I do want to do a little bit different today. I want to spend a couple of minutes literally talking to my fellow Virginians. You know, we're now 5 days out from an election, and this has been an incredibly tense time. And no matter who you're voting for, it's really critical that we realize in America our democracy works, and your vote is going to count. But it also means there may be forces trying to interfere in our elections. So I implore you, if you see something that just seems too crazy on the internet, take a deep breath. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Take a moment. If it comes on a site that appears to be legitimate, go check out on other news sites to see if that story or that charge is reinforced. If it comes from a meme or comes from a TikTok video, chances are that may not be accurate. And we all need to recognize that these next few days and the hours and days after the election are going to be some of the most critical time, I think, in recent history. So if your election is not called right away on Tuesday night, and even if it doesn't appear to be that close, there are reasons. Rules have changed. Certain jurisdictions are hand counting ballots now. That just takes a lot more time. Just because it takes a while to have an election called doesn't mean there's anything nefarious or bad going on. I think we're all going to be tested because what's more important even than whatever candidate you're supporting is making sure that we have faith in our system. You know, I've been blessed to have been your governor and your senator. I have faith in our democracy. I have faith in the integrity of the literally thousands of folks who give their time and volunteer at our polling stations. Please treat them with respect. They're doing this out of a sense of civic duty. They don't need to be abused. And I will close with where I started. This is going to be a tense time. And please don't jump to conclusions. As we all tell our kids, just because you see it on the internet does not mean it's true. And if you see some story or conspiracy that seems so outrageous, take a deep breath, take a moment, and check other news sites to see if that story is being repeated or if it may just be a one-off. I've said this many times as chairman of the Intelligence Committee. There are other nations, China, Russia, and Iran in particular, who want to interfere in our elections. They may have a candidate choice, but at the end of the day, what they mostly want to do is undermine our confidence in our system. In 2 years, we'll be celebrating our 250th anniversary of our nation. You know, our democracy has stood up through the test of time. But over these next few days, it may be tested again. And at the end of the day, I want to count on my fellow Virginians. We'll get to a fair result. Whether your candidate wins or loses, we'll make sure the process is fair, that the votes are counted fairly. And I, again, implore you, if you see crazy stuff, don't take rash action. Take a deep breath. And there are plenty of places you can turn to, particularly as we get right up to Election Day. If you're getting misinformation or you're saying, boy, somebody's telling me my polling station has changed or the hours have changed, don't just believe that because you read it someplace. Call your local election officials. They will give you accurate information. I know we can get through this. I know we're all, regardless of who you're voting for, we're going to be ready to have this presidential election in the rearview mirror. But these next few days are critical to our Commonwealth's future and our country's future. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Laura and be happy to take your questions.
Senator, our first question is Mitchell Miller with WTOP.
Hi, Senator. Thank you very much for joining us, as always. Following up on some of the points you just made, as you're well aware, Republicans have made a major issue of election integrity. Others view it as a way to limit access to the ballot box. Former President Trump over the last couple of days has made some exaggerated claims about fraud, specifically in the key state of Pennsylvania. I just wanted to know, how concerned are you about these kind of claims in the final days of the campaign, as well as after the election? Do you have concern about the GOP laying the groundwork for what some have called Stop the Steal 2.0?
What we saw after the 2020 election were literally dozens of lawsuits brought. Every one of those lawsuits got dismissed because we went through a legal process. Judges, whether they'd been appointed by Trump or Obama or Bush, stood up for rule of law. It does seem a little strange that even before the election has taken place, if you really think you're going to win, why are you being that critical of a system that has historically countered accurately? I think back to the 2020 election. President Trump's own head of cybersecurity said it was the safest election in American history. Now, he got fired for saying that, but I think the data supported that conclusion, and all the legal decisions supported that decision. What I'm concerned about is we have seen artificial intelligence bring a whole host of new tools. Some of those tools are called deep fakes, where a person's image or voice could sound like they're a candidate or sound like they could be a judge or an election official, and it can be manipulated. And what I am so fearful of is that somebody sees something on the internet that appears to be an image of someone potentially destroying ballots, and they jump to the conclusion that that's real, and that at the end of the day could even lead to violence in our communities. There was an example in the last couple of days, I believe in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where this kind of technology tool of a deep fake was used. It was totally fake. It was totally phony. It was immediately disproved. But I worry that if a voter sees that kind of information on a website they follow, and if they just take that information and then don't say, well, this seems a little out there, let me go check a couple of other sites. And, you know, if you're a conservative, check other conservative sites. If you're liberal, check other liberal sites. In a real way, it would be good to check a news site that is opposite of what your political views are. But please take a moment and just don't rely upon, you know, one-off story, and particularly some of the stories that permeate on the internet right now that spin these wild conspiracy theories. You know, please take that extra time and check it out, or check a couple of other particularly legitimate news sites to see if that story is reinforced or if it's simply a one-off. If it's a one-off, chances are it's not true, and in many cases that information may be being put up by spy services of our adversaries. And we have enough differences between ourselves as Americans. We can argue about that. We have our First Amendment rights to say whatever we want, but we should all be concerned when foreign governments try to interfere in our elections, and sometimes by using these technology tools. That is what I believe with all my heart will probably take place over the next few days. And as you said, Mitchell, this is not going to end in Virginia when our polls close at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, or, you know, later in the evening as later states close. We're probably not going to have a declared winner on Tuesday night. I think we just all got to be prepared for that, and have a little patience with a system that has served us well.
Senator, our next question is Raquel Martin with Nexstar. Raquel? Okay, we are going to move on to Margaret Barthel with WAMU.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for taking my question. I think, kind of heading into next week for people in the D.C. region feels, January 6th feels particularly fresh. We had Vice President Harris delivering, her closing argument at the Ellipse, and there was real, violence in the streets in D.C. and other cities, post-election in 2020. So I'm just curious if, just to kind of put a finer point on, the concerns that you've been sharing about, the election, election kind of process and how, how comfortable people feel with that process. Like, there obviously is a physical dimension to it in here in DC, and I'm just curious to hear if you have any concerns there.
I think no matter who we're for in the presidential election, we're all going to be glad when the election's over. This has felt like it's been taking forever. In many ways it has, since there were even contesting of the 2020 election, and people started making claims early on in 2021. The good news is I was very concerned that because of some of the threats made towards election officials and these folks who come in and early in the morning and open up the polling station, stay all day, make sure that votes are appropriately counted. There is a very secure system that we've put in place to make sure that votes are accurately tallied. There is a paper ballot backup, which was an improvement made over past elections. I have high confidence in the integrity of our election system. As those of us who live in the DMV, we are our nation's capital, and we have seen forces who want to upset our elections. I mean, I was on the floor of the Senate January 6th. That was not a day of love. That was not a peaceful protest. That were people trying to overthrow an elected democracy. There's been no evidence as of today of any unusual protest activity. I will continue to monitor that. Literally later today, I will be meeting and getting a final brief from the head of the FBI, from CISA, from Director of National Intelligence, from the head of the NSA, looking particularly at this foreign influence. If we see evidence of unexpected activity or threads of violent extremists from either end of the political spectrum, coming to our region, it'll be incumbent upon particularly the FBI to make sure that people are aware. I feel good going into these last few days about the responsibility of the region's citizens, but I again go back to what I'm imploring people. If you see something come across your phone, if you see or go to a website that makes some outlandish claim, it doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. I beg you, take a moment, take a deep breath, check out a couple of other news sites to see if this outrageous claim is actually being repeated elsewhere, or if it's a one-off effort to try to stir dissension. And remember, our adversaries at the end of the day, they literally want to incite political violence. And by the virtue of living around our nation's capital, we have to be on extra guard. But so far, in terms of the early voting process, I've been very proud of folks on both sides. We have not had the kind of intimidation or interference that I was fearful might take place. But we're really coming down now to the, pick your sports analogy, the last round, the fourth quarter, the last inning. And these next couple of days, I think we will see a rise of claims and speculation, some of that brought about by foreign adversaries. And again, take that deep breath. Don't jump to conclusion that just because you saw it on the internet, it's true. Please do that extra click or two to another news site, preferably one that may not agree with the candidate you're supporting. And I say that to Democrats, check a more Republican-based site. If you're a Republican, check more of a site that may be leaning the other way, just to see if these facts that are put out are actually facts or simply efforts to stir up problems.
Senator, our next question is Avery Davis with 29 News.
Hello, Senator. Thank you for talking to us today. My question is, when we're talking about these delays in vote counting, are you anticipating that any of those delays will be coming out of Virginia, or will it be more from swingier states?
Well, listen, we have a very good voting system in Virginia. We're one of the earliest states to close our polls at 7 o'clock. I think Kentucky closes at 6 o'clock, but they're Central Time, so we will be one of the first states. We have a couple of congressional districts that are going to be hotly contested. I think having those reports and having those results, chances are it won't be right away. It'll probably be into the evening on Tuesday night. So far, I feel very good about the early vote, and people are participating in ways almost at record numbers, not versus 2020 since we had COVID, but at record numbers above where we were in 22 and above where we were obviously in 2016. I feel very good about the system in Virginia. And we have also, the head of the State Board of Elections, Susan Beals, we had meetings with her 10 days ago or so down with the post office and the Postal Service are bringing about all their extraordinary measures to make sure that if you're doing a mail-in ballot, that it'll get counted. One of the things now that we're into these last few days, if you're mailing in your absentee ballot, I'd go ahead and take the extra time and take it to the post office and make sure it gets postmarked. That will make sure your ballot is counted. That may take you an extra few minutes, but making sure that your ballot is appropriately counted. The Postal Service is surging personnel to make sure that those ballots get delivered and will be swept back up on a regular basis. So I feel good about Virginia. I think more of the action will probably be in some of the more contested states. But again, you just don't know where these kind of conspiracy theories may break out. And again, I implore, no matter who you're for, preservation of our democracy is more important than the election of, candidly, of almost any single individual. And before you jump to a conclusion, take that extra couple of minutes. And if you're watching TV and you're hearing one thing, maybe check another channel. More likely, the conspiracy and crazy theories will appear on your phone or on the internet. Take that extra couple minutes and click through to a couple of other sites to make sure that this outrageous claim is not just being targeted at you and that there are other sources either validating or, for the most part, I think you'll find invalidating those kind of claims.
Senator, that was our final question.
All right, everybody, stay safe and have a happy Halloween. And again, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot next week as we get the results. And let's make sure we, again, all stand by our democracy. And again, I want to appeal, and I also thank the press because you guys are neutral, independent, but it is also going to be incumbent upon you to make sure that accurate and true information is put out to your viewing, listening, reading audience in a way that's responsible. Thanks so much.